So the Broadview Processing Facility, which is located at 1930 Beach Street, is where ICE headquarters its operations in the Chicago area. Because this is a processing facility, people are not supposed to be held here for more than 12 hours at a time. But we've gotten reports of people being held for days or even weeks in this facility, without beds, without hot meals, without hygienic products. We've heard about grandmothers and pregnant women sleeping on the ground, of dozens of people being held in a single cell. One morning I watched as detainees were marched into a van and they were wearing the same clothes they were detained in. And we have no idea how long they were there. Someone in this district actually told me that their relative had been detained by ICE. They were held at Broadview and brought at a facility in a completely different state. And when they called their family, they said that facility in the other state was the first time they had slept on a bed in days. This is why we are protesting. To be clear, this facility isn't new. In fact, a prayer vigil has been held outside this facility every Friday morning for almost 2 decades. But the way ICE has ramped up its operations, from abducting people to subjecting them to these completely inhumane conditions, that is new. And these brazen crimes against humanity is why this facility has gotten more attention in the first place. I cannot speak for everyone, but I can speak for myself. Here is what I have seen there. The first time I went to the Broadview facility was for a vigil this summer. It was pretty tame. We barely saw any officers. In fact, they ordered Uber Eats for dinner and made the driver come inside because they were scared of a bunch of people praying. Then about 5 weeks ago, some protesters joined the weekly vigil. They sat on the public streets of Broadview and refused to move when ICE agents told them to. They were arrested by Broadview PD. This got the attention of a bunch of people, including myself. So I and others joined the next Friday. There was very little escalation this first week. Broadview PD stood on the sidelines, and in fact, when a car tried to come into the facility, protesters forced it to turn around. But we did learn that day that ICE had changed their deportation time from around 8 or 9 a.m. to 5. So we came back the next week at 5 a.m. This was the first time that ICE assaulted me. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the video of an ICE officer throwing me to the ground. That was actually the third time an officer has done this. The first time they did it happened on a public street, yet again. But that wasn't the last escalation of the day. They put men on the roof with long guns. They urged us that they might use lethal munitions against us with this creepy AI voice on a tower. And as a van came in holding detainees who were banging against the door so loud you could see the doors moving, Broadview police protected ICE as they shoved us back. Broadview PD watched and did nothing. When I came back that third week at 5 a.m., I could tell that day would be different. An ICE officer came out and shot pepper balls at the ground as he told us. And around 6 was the second time ICE threw me. They also abducted a protester into the facility. That was the first time that has ever happened. We demanded their release. They said the protester would be released shortly. That did not happen. About 30 minutes later, a van was exiting the facility heading towards a protester, so I went to help that protester, once again on the public streets of Broadview. That was all the provocation an ICE officer needed to drag me, lift me up, and throw me on the concrete. That protest was supposed to be from 7 to 9 a.m., but we weren't leaving without the protester who was abducted. People joined us, and when we demanded their release, ICE brought that protester in chains into a van. They tried to drive the van out, and we, on the public streets of Broadview, said no. That is when ICE continued to try to drive through us. We had to play tug of war with a man's body from keeping him from being abducted. Another man fell in front of the car, his head by the tire, and it is a miracle that we were able to get him up in time. ICE began to shoot us with pepper balls, shooting one man in the face, splitting open his lip so blood was dripping down his chin. They tear gassed us, but they also threw a second canister at the press area. Some people may say this is what happens at protests. I can assure you, as someone who has been at a lot of protests, some of which have been gassed, some of which have had excessive force used by the police, I have never seen anything like this. Many members of the press who have covered intense protests, even riots, have said they have never seen excessive force used like this. And to be clear, none of us were violent. We didn't have weapons. We had songs and chants and posters. I brought my knitting. And this is how ICE treated us. And if this is what they're willing to do to us, to a congressional candidate, in front of press, in front of cameras, imagine what they are doing behind boarded up windows.